Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at the Romanian National Military Museum by the kind arrangement of ANCA, the Romanian National Firearms Collectors Association, and we're taking a look at some interesting Romanian conversions today. Specifically, we have a Romanian carbinized M91 Mosin, a rifle that is often mistaken for a St. Petersburg cavalry carbine, a mistake that I have made myself in the past, which we will now correct. So the background on these is that after World War I, the Romanian army had a huge supply of rifles. They had well over 1 million rifles, but they were split into several different mechanical categories. They had Mannlichers, M88, M88-90 Mannlichers, they had M95 Mannlichers, they had Berthiers, they had Mosin Nagants. So how do they logistically deal with this? Well, the solution that they came up with was to split the rifles up geographically, along with the machine guns. So each area of Romania, the regiments in that area all had standardized ammunition logistics. This was a way to use what they have, like make the best of the equipment that they already have without trying to sell a ton of it and replace it with expensive new equipment. So the military forces in Moldavia got Mosin Nagants and 7.62 by 54 millimeter machine guns. Now that's all fine and good. The next step of this problem is that while they had a tremendous number of rifles, they didn't have that many carbines, something like 10 or 11% as many carbines as long guns, and they needed a lot more carbines. This is in the 1920s and more substantially in the 1930s, there are a lot of support element sorts of troops that are best served with carbines rather than long rifles. Machine gun crews, engineers, all sorts of people that don't need a full-length M91 Mosin. So the decision is made to cut down existing rifles into carbines, and they did this with Mosins as well as Mannlichers and, for example, Berthiers. So I actually have a separate video on the Berthier conversion. If you're curious about that, you can check out that video. But what they did with the Mosins was substantially more complex than what they did with the Mannlichers and the Berthiers. They did more here. Well, let's go ahead and start with the most obvious big visual element, which is the bayonet on the side of the rifle here. At the front end, all you have to do is just flip the bayonet around and mount it backwards. At the back end, they added this sheet metal cover. So it's a pretty simple little thing. 2 screws down there, 2 screws up here, and they modified the rear barrel band to include a loop that the tip of the bayonet goes through. This is under significant tension, so it's bent a little bit to help keep it in place. Not enough tension to keep it on there securely while shooting the rifle, but definitely enough that it won't just bounce off the gun. So to take this off, I'm just going to kind of wiggle it a bit. There we go. And it's a totally standard Mosin bayonet here, the early kind, by the way, with the rotating locking ring. And it will still fit nicely on, there we go, on the end of the rifle for actual bayonet use. Now, let's take a look at all the rest of the modifications here. So first off, these are rifles that were acquired, that were captured at the end of World War I. So of course, when the Russian Revolution takes place, there are a lot of Russian soldiers in Romania, substantial amounts of Russian armaments in Romania, and over the course of the Romanian army keeping those guys under control, getting them back into Russia, the Romanian expedition into Russia, Romania ends up with a significant number of Russian small arms. And that's where the base rifles for these conversions come from. They're typically pretty early guns. They might have been Cossack rifles. They might have been dragoons at this point with the conversion work that's been done. You really can't tell. But this particular one is an 1897 dated receiver. And in fact, as we can see from the stock, this was a really early rifle. It had the long tang on it, and it actually had a round hole for a stock there that was plugged, or for a sling swivel there that was plugged by the Romanians. To make this conversion, they first bent the bolt handles. This is basically exactly the same as what they did to the Berthier carbines. Just take the straight handle, bend it down for cavalry things. In this case, they actually destroyed, defaced the Russian Tsarist eagle on there. The overall length of the rifle matches that of the 1907 carbines, which is the same as the M38 carbines and M44 carbines that would come later, but those postdate this. So sort of the carbine model that was available to work from was the 1907 carbine, and they essentially duplicated the 1907 carbine rear sight, but they did it by making a new sight leaf and then cutting down the original M91 sight base. So we can actually still see a couple of the range markings here. If I lift that up, you can see the remnants of the original sight steps. That's actually pretty cool. That's a fairly unusual sort of conversion element. We then have substantial work done to the barrel bands. So the rear band now has this extra hole to keep the bayonet in place. The front barrel band has a flat surface here to put tension on the bayonet, and it also has a sling bar on the side, and that sling bar is essentially identical in structure to the sling setup on the Romanian M93 Mannlicher carbines. And, in fact, at the back end of the rifle, we have what might actually be the components from an M93 Mannlicher. If they're not the actual Mannlicher parts, they're identical copies thereof. So there's a bushing inside the stock, and this sling bar is just threaded on going through it. So this uses the exact same sling arrangement as the Mannlicher carbines, which were the main armament of the Romanian army going into World War I. And then the front sight and muzzle have been spliced on, essentially, from the original full length of the M91 barrel. They cut off the section with the front sight, bored it out, and then sleeved it over the back end of the barrel. So this is where they cut the barrel down, turned it down to match the dimension there. So this means that the original bayonets will still fit without any modification. It means they can fairly easily attach the original front sights. Lastly, we have a couple of Romanian marks. That is, of course, a Russian proof mark, but that little X is a Romanian mark from the conversion work. We have a Romanian mark here in the finger groove. That's really difficult to make out, but that's like a little 8-pointed starburst of triangles. It's pretty worn. But you will see that, for example, on Romanian Mannlichers. And then we have a little tiny marking there. I believe that's CAR in a square, and that's from the Romanian arsenal that did the conversion work. These conversions were ordered in the mid to late 1930s. So this is actually taking place not immediately after World War I, but actually on the cusp of World War II. And the Mosins, being the most complex of these conversion projects, appear to have been the ones that took the longest. So by 1938, most of the Mannlichers, most of the Berthiers were finished, but the Mosins were only about 2/3 done. Presumably they were all finished before the war actually started, but the one piece of data we have access to is where they were in 1938. So these guns then also continued to be used after World War II. The Berthiers, the Mannlichers, those leave service after World War II because they're using ammunition that's no longer being used by the Romanian army. But Romania becomes associated with the Soviet bloc. They're going to be using 7.62 by 54 rimmed, and so these carbines remain in service through at least the 1950s. As such, they're rebuilt, and so you get in like a second tranche of modifications and repairs made to them, which makes them even more interesting. So hopefully this has been an interesting video in helping to unravel the mystery of what some people refer to as the St. Petersburg Cavalry School carbines, which are not. They are, in fact, Romanian pre-World War II conversions. Now, a big thanks to the Romanian National Military Museum for giving me access to this one and some great background information to present to you guys. If you happen to be in Bucharest and you have some free time, don't hesitate to stop by the museum. They have a really cool artillery and armored vehicle park, as well as 4 floors of exhibitions on not just Romanian military history, but Romanian cultural history as well, going all the way back to the earliest Stone Age settlements here. So, cool museum, good folks, and a really cool carbine. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.